Welcome to the Existential Man podcast, a show that explores the unique challenges men face today. From navigating relationships to understanding the workplace, finances, mental health, and beyond, our mission is to provide an open forum to discuss these issues and to offer advice on how to better address them. We'll be featuring conversations with people from all walks of life, from experts in the fields of psychology, sociology, and other disciplines to everyday men who have faced and overcome their own struggles. We'll dive into the issues that have become part of the cultural landscape and work together to build a better version of you tomorrow. Let's go.
What is going on, guys? This is Matt with the Existential Man, and thank you for tuning in to another episode. We are back. Finally, after over a year of not recording, I am back in the studio, reinvigorated and ready to re-engage. You know, it's been a tough last year. 2022 was not good to me. Had a lot of things going on. And just needed to take some time to kind of reevaluate where I'm at. So I'll jump right into it. Spent a lot of time away from creating over the last year, mainly due to a few things, but been out of town a lot on work travel, and I haven't invested in a portable recording solution as of yet. I have a couple options that I could potentially put together, but when I travel for work, sometimes I have to travel quite light for personal gear because I carry a lot of tools with me when I do go on travel. So sometimes it's a little bit difficult to make that happen, but yeah, so been out at least once a month for 11 out of the 12 months of the year in 2022, averaging for, a week or longer for a lot of that. So it's been a little bit difficult. And then obviously once I get home, got to get back focused on what I'm doing here, focus on the family, trying to do a lot of things that require my attention elsewhere, which has been good in terms of building my relationship with my family, or at least maintaining that relationship with my family. But, I use podcasting as a way to kind of not vent, but it's kind of a creative outlet for me. And I enjoy talking to you guys and getting your feedback on the episodes and trying to learn more about you guys as a listener and as listeners and guys and gals, and try and figure out and answer some of your guys' questions based on my own perspectives, as well as the research that I've done and talking with other people in the industry. And so, not being able to do some of that has been a little bit difficult. In addition, I've had some personal health issues. I don't know how many of you know this or anybody that's listening has experienced this, but I actually have complex regional pain syndrome. I have a spinal cord nerve stimulator in my back, and I have constant nerve pain in my lower body all the time. Sometimes it gets difficult to deal with, especially with extreme weather conditions and changes in weather patterns and things of that sort. So some of that has something to do with part of the reason why I've been out, just not feeling up to it. Been through a couple stages of minor depression, just things going on, feeling unappreciated at work, sometimes feeling unappreciated at home, which I think a lot of you guys can kind of relate to. And so some of that is, it's kind of a combination of things: being gone all the time, working, feeling like I'm working all the time, overworking, being underappreciated. And a lot of that leads to just general burnout, not just with podcasting, but, with everything, not necessarily wanting to take a step back from life per se, but just needing some time to recharge. And sometimes when you're super busy and you got a lot of shit going on, it's hard to do that. So a lot of that kind of snowballed this past year in 2022, and some of my plans for the year they went out the window. And so here I am. I'm back, and kind of wanted to chat with you guys just a little bit about why I'd been gone and some of my plans for the upcoming year, plans for the podcast, future moving forward. During the time off, during the downtime, in a little bits of time that I did have to kind of focus on where I wanted to go and the direction I wanted to take the podcast in, I was able to kind of revamp, review and get ready to refresh when I was ready to re-engage with you guys. And a lot of that comes down to our kind of next little segment here is kind of figuring out how to get the 30,000 foot view, if you will, the large overview of the grand plan. And so, it yeah, that's where I was at. Out a lot for work and just health issues, burnout, not feeling very well, not feeling up to it, not feeling like I was ready to engage. A lot of it come down to the fact that I wasn't sure that where I was at mentally and physically, I could provide good content for you guys. But here we go. We're ready to come back into it. So there is an old Zen proverb that says, "Man stands in his own shadow and wonders why it's dark." And a lot of times that comes down to being so stuck in the middle of the situation that we fail to take account and take inventory of where we're at and where we want to be. And so for me, with the amount of time that I'd taken off from podcasting, from creating, from being engaged in this conversation, this continuing conversation that we have going on, I did take some time to go through and do a 30,000 foot view, if you will, the large overview over the grand plan, and kind of take a step back and see what it is that I was trying to accomplish, what my goals are, because I had a plan when we first started out back at the very end of 2019. Was it 2020 when we first started this podcast? And, even through all of that, I was traveling a lot for work. It was hard to schedule interviews with people that I really wanted to talk to, people that I thought would have really good insights for you guys. And so you notice that I did some episodes on my own, kind of like this one. But, I needed to figure out a way to make that work, because I do have a desire to bring you guys some really good high level quality content. And so the importance to me was figuring out the way to do that, the best way that fit within my schedule, and a way to bring you guys the best people that can answer your questions, whether that be me or bringing on other guests or experts, things of that sort. So that is part of the plan. But a lot of that was I had to kind of evaluate my priorities. I needed to see where it was. And so during this time where I was going through and getting that 30,000 foot high level view over where I wanted to be with creating content and building this thing for us, because this is not just a journey for you. This is not learning experience for you. This is for me. I'm learning right along with you guys. So my hope is that by me learning and kind of going through some of these experiences, either in my past or in my present, I can help you guys take some time, reflect, and become better versions of yourselves, as I'm trying to do with myself. Ultimately, I've said before, and I'll say it again, and I'll continue to say this, is one of my goals is to wake up tomorrow and be a better version of myself tomorrow than I am today. And a lot of that comes down to knowing where you're at. So during that period of time where I decided to take a step back, get a high level view of where I was, I realized that I wasn't. During that period of time where I decided to take a step back and get a high level view of where I was, I realized that I wasn't quite in line with some of my goals. And so it came down to how do I re-implement and refresh this podcast and some of the content and make it more in line with my goals. When I first started the Existential Man podcast, I was in a certain place mentally, and my thoughts were kind of jumbled. And there was some things that I'd gone through in my recent past that kind of, I wouldn't say tarnished, but had an effect on my perspective, right? And so as we go through these things and we start to learn a little bit more about where we're at and what our goals are, and we start to try and work through those things, sometimes we get a little bit more perspective and a little bit more clarity on where we want to go and how those things align with our goals. And so during this time where I was looking at my 30,000 foot view, I had to reestablish my goals with the Existential Man. I had to reestablish what it is that I wanted to do and where I wanted to go and how I wanted to make this quality for you and for me, so that it's evergreen, so that anybody that comes to this podcast, anybody that comes to watch these episodes or listen to these episodes can really get something out of it. And so my hope is that in the process of evaluating those goals and taking that high level view, that we can create something really good out of this. Some things that I kind of have thought about is figuring out a way to implement a live stream schedule for video live streaming, where I can actually bring guests on and they can join me and ask questions and learn a little bit more about me, and maybe I can provide some clarity on their situation. A lot of that comes down to it's hard to see the forest for the trees when you are in the middle of your own situation, when you're in the middle of your own shit. But sometimes having somebody else there to kind of get an outside perspective or outside looking in, it's a little bit easier to kind of gain some clarity. Even when it's something we don't necessarily want to hear, it's helpful to have an outside perspective say, no, this is where you're at, this is where you need to be, and this is how you need to get there. Or these are some suggestions and some steps that I would take if I was in your position to get there. So that's one of the things. The other thing, one of the other big things for me is in creating kind of a content plan, if you will. In the past, at least for the first few episodes, I didn't really have a plan going forward. I was concerned, let me rephrase, I was not concerned so much about creating this long-term focus, but more so concerned about just getting content out there, because that's one of the things that, the quote-unquote experts will say is just create the content and focus on the rest later. Well, that works, but only to a certain point. And on some level, if you don't have a plan going in for an episode or for a season or however you want to create this plan, you're going to have a hard time sticking to it. And that's one thing that I did find. So ultimately, in the process of kind of going through some of the stuff that I went through and taking the time off, taking that year off of not podcasting, not creating anything for anybody, including myself, I kind of, like I said, I took that time, got my 30,000 foot view, took a step back, and really had to reevaluate my priorities and make sure that my goals with the podcast were falling in line with those priorities. And so, again, I've got some things that are planned for this coming year and how I want to move forward with the Existential Man podcast and creating some live stream and working with the website a little bit. I'm in the middle of revamping the website right now. We're working on a plan to be able to have a way for you guys as listeners to ask questions for upcoming shows or recommend topics that you would like me to discuss. There's also the implementation. We are getting ready to launch our call-in voicemail line where you can actually ask a question verbally and you will be featured on an upcoming episode asking your question. And myself and experts that we bring on, other people, guests, can answer those questions based on the information that you give us. So those are some things in a plan moving forward. And so I kind of want to get into a little bit more about how I created that plan and maybe talk a little bit more about some of those things that we've got planned moving forward. All right. So when I started creating this plan and kind of really thinking about how I wanted to move forward with the Existential Man, I needed to find some way to put it all down and have a way to go back and look at all these goals and the content plan and how I wanted to lay it out from a planning perspective, long term, 1 week, 1 month, 6 months, 1 year, whatever, lay it out and kind of have a flow for episodes, blog posts, YouTube videos, YouTube live streams, whatever we want to do, as well as kind of working on building our community on Facebook, our Existential Man private group, where guys and gals can go to ask questions and get direct feedback from myself and other members within the group. So one of the tools that I'm using to do that is one that I actually was recommended by a friend of mine. It's called Plutio, and Plutio is an online. It's actually a business planning tool. Really, you can do a lot of things with it. You can do Kanban boards. You can do scheduling. You can do invoices and forms, and bring people on. And I'm not using a lot of that, but I am really, really heavily using my scheduler and the Plutio Kanban boards, however you pronounce it, to kind of plan out my episodes. And so, we start with our concept and we list out topic ideas, either from our concepts, guest recommendations, or audience recommendations. So when you guys submit your requests or your questions, we will evaluate those and see, is it worth having a whole episode about? Should we bring on an expert? And so those are some of the things where it's really good to get that feedback from you guys about how we can make our show better for you. And so myself and my producer and one of my some of my content folks, we're going through those and looking at them and trying to evaluate which ones are going to be the best to create a solid, long stream, informative, helpful content for you guys. And so, Plutio has been, I don't want to say a godsend, but pretty close. I mean, it allows us to do a lot of things, and I can have the team members on there. They can add information. When you guys fill out forms on the website, we can have that automatically drip into the Plutio platform, and it'll come in as a recommendation or a request. And so it really, really makes it easy for us to consolidate all of that in one place. And so, matter of fact, Plutio is so helpful that at some point, for those of you that are business owners or want to get into business, I actually will probably end up doing a video tutorial on how I use it for my content plans and work through that. So if anybody is interested, let me know in the comments or shoot me an email. Give me a call on the 800 line. All those things will be down in the show notes down below, as well as listen towards the end. We'll get all that information out there to you. So one of the great things with Plutio as well is I can set up multiple boards, right? I've got a board for my podcast. I've got a board for my blogs. I've got a board for YouTube videos and ideas. And I have a board for my own goals, not just for the Existential Man and some of my other side hustles, if you will, or some of my other muses, but also for my own personal goals. And so I can kind of keep track of those, and I can set due dates, and I can set subtasks, and it's kind of like the old saying goes, like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And so one of those things that Plutio really helps with is I can create short-term goals, I can create long-term goals, and I can make my lists as short or as long as I want. And so that's kind of what I started doing. That's how I started it off. When I jumped into the platform the very first time, I just started writing goals. And then, it became this really long list. And then so I had to start separating, okay, is this something that I want to do for business or the podcast? Or is it something I want to do for my own personal life? Or is it something I want to do at work? Or things that I want to focus on for the year? And then I can separate them and keep track of them based on the area of my life that those goals will affect over time. And so that's one of the really, really helpful benefits, at least that I can see, for using this platform or any kind of goal planning platform. I just happen to like Plutio because it's very well versed and they're adding features all the time. So they're not a sponsor of this just to clarify, they're not sponsoring this episode. They've not paid me to say all this. I just really like their platform, and it's growing all the time. They're working on, they're constantly fixing things. They're making things better, adding new features. So Leo and the guys, the team over at Plutio, have been doing a really, really fantastic job with all of that. So I really appreciate the hard work they're doing, because it's really helped me kind of create this, I don't want to say, I guess it's kind of like a little task journal for me. I've tried a few things like bullet journaling and regular journaling and using my iPhone scheduler and my phones. And those are all great things. And I don't want to knock anybody that's using them, because I think for the right person, those work very well. For me, it was a consistency issue. It was hard for me to consistently remember to update my bullet journal and transfer things over. And sometimes it's, with the iPhone scheduler and tasks, it's just easier to jot a quick note down and stick it in my pocket. But then, like a lot of people, I'll forget that note's in my pocket, and then I take my clothes off, throw them in a hamper, and then it gets washed. And now I can't read what the note was, and whatever that was is obviously not a priority anymore. So, it's just kind of a way for me to keep things in line. So anyways, using this platform, I created a short list of goals. Well, I started with a short list of goals, and it just grew and grew and grew, and it's still growing. And so I'm kind of, it's a living, breathing document, I guess, if you will, from that standpoint, because I'm constantly adding to it. I'm constantly making changes. I'm constantly reevaluating, but that's what I love, is that it is evergreen, and I can continue to go back and make changes. I can add tasks as I find out, if I want to get to the end goal, these are the steps that I have to take. And if I miss a step, or I don't know something and I find something out, then I can add it later as a subtask or as a step to accomplish this goal. And so those are some of the really good things that I love about that, and actually being able to revisit it constantly. I can go into my phone, open up the Plutio app, and really dive deep into it. I can color code it. I mean, there's so many customization ways. So, and I'm not trying to make this podcast all about Plutio, and I do apologize. It just happens to be the platform that I am using, and I love it. Everything about it so far that I've been able to use, I absolutely love it. So get yourself something that you can use to create your goal plan for the year, or for the next 6 months, or for the next 30 days, 90 days, whatever it is. You set a timeline and you start working through those tasks, those subtasks, the little things, the one bite at a time to finish eating that elephant. Whatever it is, you guys got to make sure that you find whatever it is that works for you to get that done. So kind of here's a I guess a rough timeline moving forward. Obviously we're getting ready to launch this episode. We'll be going live here shortly, and we're going to start creating a content plan for weekly releases on the podcast. And I'm looking at implementing also either a weekly or a bi-weekly, every other week live stream, where we can actually have people come on, ask questions. We'll invite guests and experts from different areas, health and fitness, mental health, relationships, money and side hustles, things of that, people that have already had successes in these areas outside of myself, and bring them in and have almost like a live coaching session where people can come in and ask questions and learn and gain knowledge and gain perspective and clarity on what situations they got going on in their lives. And so I plan to implement that, get some things together and start planning some live streams by the end of January, beginning of February timeframe. And so that's that. Also been working with some folks, some friends of mine who are also content creators across the country, potentially building a men's summit for later in the year, getting some experts together out of some of those same genres: health and fitness, relationships, money and finance, personal protection, things of that sort, and putting together an actual multi-day virtual summit where people can go, or you can sign up, buy your tickets, and actually join us for a multiple day event. And you can pick which seminars or which events that you actually want to watch. You don't necessarily have to be there for the whole thing, but, having that opportunity to have multiple experts there during a certain period of time where you can kind of get as much of the content as you want, or as little of the content as you want. You can pick and choose who you want to watch and who you want to see at those given times. So that's kind of what we're looking for down the road. That'll be probably after the midway point of the year. And then, obviously implementing that live stream show, continuing to do the once a week podcast episodes, and really trying to move this thing forward. So guys, look, I really appreciate you guys sticking around with me for the last 20 minutes or so. Going to be working on creating some more streamlined episodes in the future for the upcoming shows, and working on getting some really solid guests in here. Got my plan starting to build out, starting to look at implementing some live streams and the men's summit, and really looking forward to some good things here coming up on the Existential Man for 2023. So guys, I appreciate your time. Thank you for tuning in. We will catch you on the next episode. Take care.
Thank you for tuning into the Existential Man podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful. If you did, please give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Your support and feedback are essential to making this podcast successful. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions for future episodes, please let us know. We hope that you'll consider sharing our podcast on Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. You can also subscribe on our website and follow us on social media for more content. We want to thank you for being part of this journey with us and for being the most important part of the Existential Man community. Until next time, stay curious, live with purpose, and take care.